You're listening to DecayMag, Horror Entertainment News Podcast. Online source for news, interviews and trending topics.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Ken R2's, your host for DecayMag, Horror Entertainment News Podcast. This is Season 9, Episode 6, and this particular episode is very special. We're going to be covering music, and we have 3 exclusive interviews on our exclusive interview segment. First, Ronan Harris from VNV Nation. Our second exclusive interview, Nostalghia. And our third interview was a pre-recorded interview that we had conducted a few months back on another podcast that I was starting to explore and really delve into the world of industrial EBM, darkwave, electro music. And I am republishing that interview here, and I am referring to the interview I did with Ya Toyah, recording artist Ya Toyah. And in this episode, as I had mentioned, this is a music episode. So we're going to scratch the horror entertainment name for a bit. And with upcoming podcasts for DecayMag Horror Entertainment News Podcast, we're going to be also covering various music elements within the genres of electronic, darkwave, electro, and slash or music compositions, as we have in the past within the horror and thriller genres, film genres, because music is an important, just as much as an important factor for film production as, let's say, lighting or cinematography. So stay tuned for those upcoming topics in future episodes, and we are going to also be securing more interviews with musicians, either for film composers as we have in the past, or musicians within industrial, darkwave, EBM, so on and so forth. Witch House, if you haven't heard of Witch House, that's another area that is fast growing. Before I delve into the interviews, a quick recap on the landscape of electro music, and I'm going to be delving on topics that include the majority of the reports, hot off the press, hot topics, are album releases, followed by a recent signing to Metropolis Records. So, without further ado, let's begin DecayMag Horror Entertainment News Podcast, Season 9, Episode 6. And remember, you could find this podcast on all major platforms: Google Music, Apple Podcast, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, and of course, Podbean.
Frontline Assembly album release.
Wake Up Coma is the next album from electro-industrial music pioneers Frontline Assembly. As of this moment, pre-orders are being taken for the CD, digital, vinyl formats. All you have to do is go to Bandcamp and or Metropolis Records, either or, to secure a pre-order. Wake Up Coma will release on the 8th of February 2019. This album features 12 tracks, some of which include collaborations with veterans in the electro-industrial music field. For example, the first track on the album, Frontline Assembly, features a collaboration with Robert Girl. The name of the track is Eye on You. The 8th track, Frontline Assembly teams with Nick Holmes on Wake Up the Coma. And And the final track, the 12th track in this album, Frontline Assembly, features Chris Connolly, and the name of that track is Spitting Wind. Wake Up Coma features remixes by Terrence Fixmer and Orfix, with guest vocals, as I have mentioned, Chris Connell and Nick Holmes and Jimmy Urin. The album's opening track, Iron You, released back in November, and it really showcased Frontline Assembly's collaboration with fellow musicians, and this is a fantastic album. I do love and appreciate the evolution of Frontline Assembly across so many years. It's been 20 plus years, and they are still churning out new material. On a sadder note, this release comes at a bittersweet moment. The album marks the first album, actually, since the passing of longtime Frontline Assembly member Jeremy Inkle, who passed away earlier this year, back in January. Once again, Wake Up the Coma, arriving on Metropolis Records. Secure your copy, or you could hop onto Bandcamp. 12 tracks, can't wait to hear this. Eagerly anticipating. And for those of you who have yet not heard I On You, the album's opening track, do so. It just gives you a little taste test while you wait for 2018 to end. And well, we have to wait a couple of extra weeks, but it's right around the corner.
Siva 6 album release.
Another electro-industrial artist busy at work in the studio is Siva 6, and they are working on their next album release, their 5th album to be specific. This release reunites Dimitri Duras with the editing and production phase of the album. Here is a quote from vocalist Z from Siva 6. States as follows, quote, "It's always hard and painful for me to go through this procedure. I make albums because I have reasons to do so, and this is the first album that was written outside Athens, in Leipzig, which was the ideal ghost town for me to concentrate on the concept. A projection of my latest experiences and adventures is what it's all about," unquote. If you haven't heard of the sound that Siva 6 really offers, I definitely suggest taking a listen to the album Nix. There's so many good choices on that album. Take, for example, we have Forever remixed by A7IE, Apocalypsis remixed by Antibody. The whole album for Nix, it's a remix album, and each track on that album conveys its own sonic tonality and lyrical poesy that you have to sit and really analyze these soundscapes. And I'm looking forward to this 5th release for Siva 6, and based on the comment that Z offers, I can see that there's going to be a lot of profound emotional context and content within this next 5th album. So far, there is no release date. I foresee perhaps in the 4th quarter, perhaps the 3rd quarter for the 2019 calendar year, if all goes well. We all know the constraints and the tribulations of composing in the studio, but that's all part of the artistic process. So I highly suggest the listeners out there to really absorb. This is a lot of work to jump into, It's not just playing the synthesizers, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot of thought process and emotion behind each song you hear on an album.
Kultür album release.
The level of diversity in the electro industrial music genre is fantastic. You have artists from every region of the world expressing one common, not to pigeonhole the genre, but one common thread, and that is merging actually the marriage of machine and man, machine being the instruments and man being, of course, the emotional context. Which brings us to our next topic. Kultür. It's been a while we haven't heard anything new from them, but wait no more. They are going to release their 5th album. It is titled Humanity. This album drops on the 21st of January via Caustic Records. And of course, pre-orders are being taken right now at the label's web store. Here's another fantastic news for Kultür. They are branching over to incorporate video. And what I mean by that, they have released their first music video. And it is based off the single of the album titled Refugees. You can catch it on YouTube. We'll be providing the link in our podcast notes. And so far, it looks amazing. It looks like a science fiction, post-apocalyptic cornucopia of visuals. So once again, Humanity is the next release from Kultür. And they are, for those who are unaware, they are based from Spain. Yes. Amazing. In any event, this has, I think, their last album released in 2010, if memory serves me correct. Wow, 8 years. That is a long hiatus, and it is expected. Some artists prefer to wait longer and have a few gaps. Others prefer to churn out album behind album. But nevertheless, I am looking forward to hearing this next album from Kultür. And I really can't wait those couple of weeks for January next year. And do check out their first video, Refugees. Amazing stuff. It's great to see how musicians are now branching out and utilizing the different aspects and platforms available to them. In this case, YouTube. But let's see what holds in store for other social media platforms. Let's say, I don't know, Instagram stories. We'd love to see behind the scenes from Kultür and how this album came together.
DicePeople Somebody to Love single release.
I consider myself to be a music aficionado, especially when it comes to the realm of electronic music. And it really excites me when I make a new discovery, a new band or a new recording artist. I had recently discovered this band called DicePeople, and they consist of Matt Brock Zimora and Rafael Filomero as visual artists. And the soundscapes that best describe DicePeople, their music style ranges from EBM, Electro, Darkwave, Synthwave, so on and so forth. Do check DicePeople out. In fact, they have a new music video from their remake their own stylistic interpretation of Jefferson Airplane's Somebody to Love. That single dropped on the 7th of December, and now there is a music video accompaniment for that track. And you could catch that single. It's featured on Def Synth Halloween Masquerade compilation. This compilation album features covers from bands that they are selecting songs outside of their normal approaches, and that increases creativity. Once you start to pigeonhole yourself, whether you are a remixer or if you are strictly witch house, if you are unsure on how to take a different genre and put your own interpretation of it, yeah, it's time to really get the creative juices flowing. In any event, Jefferson's Airplane cover, Somebody to Love, the video is out, and of course, accompanying that single is also a single titled Borderline Wish, which comes off of the first album from the DicePeople titled Time to Play. And both those singles are available on the digital store and of course streaming services, Bandcamp, for DicePeople. As I had mentioned, when I first discovered DicePeople, wow, amazing. I do love the vocals, well, everything about the soundscape, of course, but it is something about female vocals that is, I could play it all day here in the office. And I am not so much familiar with Jefferson Airplane, but Somebody to Love, yeah, that is a common song. And this interpretation of the song, it is, if I were to describe it, it has a profound witch house feel. And of course, witch house is a fairly new music genre that incorporates a lot of experimentation, synthesizers, at times repurposing content, in many cases playing it in reverse, adding some vintage synth sounds to it. It's an experience. If you haven't heard it, do search for it. It's all over YouTube and SoundCloud. But when I heard DicePeople's interpretation of Somebody to Love, yeah, that's the first thing that came to mind.
Buio Mondo album release.
Well, in this topic, it ties in music and, of course, horror themes and cinema. Buio Mondo released their album on digital format and on cassette, but apparently listeners out there have cassette players. So the cassette format for this new album from Buio Mondo titled Bloom is down to 800 copies. Fascinating. I would thought that the analog players would be out the window, especially with everything being digital these days. But before I digress, here is some information on Bloom, the new album from Buio Mondo. Bloom is an adaptation mod for Z Doom, which combines two of the most influential horror video games to date, and that is the video game titled Blood and the video game titled Doom. The album has 12 tracks, and they are the complete soundtracks of the first unreleased episode from The Way of the Doomed Flesh, performed by Buio Mondo, and Hall of Eternity, a cover of the themes of Blood, Unholy Voices, by Daniel Bernstein. Interesting perspective from Mondo, and some of the tracks here are truly haunting. The English translation, thank you Google Translate. Here are some of the songs on this 12-track album: Nightmare in the Form of a Cube, Parallel Dimensions, Temple of Cabal, and Final Thanks. If you enjoy horror video games as much as I do, especially nostalgic video games, and really want to capture that soundscape, as I mentioned at the top of this podcast, music plays such an important role when it comes to horror content. And what better way to embrace that than with something that Buio has put together that complements two of the most influential video games to date. If for those that do play survival horror games such as The Evil Within, or in my case Dead Space, there are YouTube and on SoundCloud the soundtracks to these albums is quite fascinating. You don't need to play the game to really feel that ambiance of terror and the lurking dangers in the shadows. Once again, Buio's Bloom is available on Bandcamp, and as I stated, they have a cassette version of it, which surprises me still when I say it. It is down to 800 copies.
Metropolis signs she passed away.
As I had mentioned before, as a music enthusiast, especially in the electronic genre, I'm content when I discovered something new. Another artist that I had discovered a few months ago is She Passed Away. And it just happened by chance. I was listening to YouTube and I had it on random. I had a song playing, and when you have a track playing, YouTube just throws it into random. And She Passed Away, a song was playing from them. I thought, wow, fascinating vocals. I have no idea what the lead singer is saying because it's in Turkish, but it definitely captures with the guitars and the whole sound, and of course the vocals just invokes that nostalgic era of goth music. And of course goth music is still around, but it's just when you hear something modern and it takes you to that nostalgic era on the dance floor, in my case in Ward 6 here in New York City, that definitely feels refreshing. Which brings us to the topic before I digress. She Passed Away, they recently got signed by Metropolis Records. That's great. Could only mean that we're going to see more content from She Passed Away, and for those who haven't heard of them before, you're surely going to be in for a treat, because Metropolis Records are going to reissue 2 of She Passed Away's releases. The first is the 2012 release, This Night. Of course, that's translated from Turkish. I'm going to attempt the translation, Beldri Grisi. And the 2015 album, Delicate Solitude. Once again, here's my attempt at translating, Narin Yazilik. Fascinating. These upcoming releases would be provided in digital, of course, and CD. And of course, they're going to have, Metropolis is going to offer a limited edition vinyl with pre-orders for everything available via Bandcamp and of course via Metropolis Records web store. For those who are curious to hear She Passed Away, all you have to do is hop on to YouTube and watch their latest music video titled Pale. You would find it under the original title, So Look. And this is the first track on the Narin Yalznik album. It was directed by Demetrius Chazli, and it also features another personal favorite band that I always have in rotation here at the office, Drab Majesty. So check that video out, and also hop over to Metropolis Records and Bandcamp to secure your pre-releases. I tell you, the vocals are definitely are what going to set and capture your attention. It's very deep, and I could only describe it as nostalgic to that era, the bygone era of goth music.
Segment 2. Exclusive interviews. Ronan Harris, VNV Nation.
Kicking off our exclusive interview segment. Segment 2 is a conversational interview with founding member of VNV Nation, Mr. Ronan Harris. And VNV Nation released their 10th studio album this year, titled Noir. And following the release of Noir is a US and European tour in which The Rain Within and Hologram are joining VNV Nation on this tour. Dublin-born Ronan Harris, he describes Noir, the 10th album for VNV Nation, as follows, quote, dark and intense energy that does not hold back, unquote. For those who have been following the work of VNV Nation over the past 20 plus years, such as myself, you have seen and embraced the emotional context, the lyrical poesy, and the soundscapes that VNV Nation is known for. Talk about evolution. I have not yet seen a band evolve over the years that does not give in to the latest trends or trending sounds. VNV Nation provides a distinct sound, and each song has a message that can be translated into our current technological, social, political landscape, whether it be your conspiracy on, let's say, for example, transhumanism or technology, or, of course, the threat of war. Of course, these are personal interpretations. Everybody has their own when listening to each sound. Norin, fantastic album. It is available right now through Metropolis Records. And in this conversational interview between myself and Mr. Ronan Harris, we delve into his interpretations and, of course, Noir, as well as today's social landscape when it comes with technology, utilizing technology and the advancements of technology, for example, virtual reality and social networking platforms. This is a very profound and in-depth conversational interview. Do listen to Mr. Ronan Harris' perspectives on these different topics. I am content to present, and I'm always fascinated and do embrace the knowledge. We often see artists on stage or filmmakers behind the camera, but it's great to embrace the artistic side, the knowledge that these performers and filmmakers and musicians can provide to us, the audience, the listener, on a one-on-one basis. Without further ado, here is my conversational interview with Mr. Ronan Harris, founding member of VNV Nation. I have 3 segments that I'll be providing questions for. We'll begin with music and your 10th album, Noah. The last we spoke, we delved onto the topic of music videos and it not being a requirement, an option really. Shift 2 years later and we find a collaboration with Mondo Inc. and the video for When is the Future. Please share your thoughts on providing video content in this stage of your career.
Well, I've never felt that it was an option. I felt that it wasn't necessary because I've tried to have videos made for years, and I'm just not a fan of having a video. I want the video to relate to the song. I want it to either express the song or expand on it. And I had really bad luck with video companies for years, coming back with suggestions that were either boring or laughable, and I just gave up on the idea. So when I was working on Noir, I approached 10 video companies about making a video for the song When is the Future, and I connected with this couple who do really great videos. I saw their material. I thought, I think these people will get it, and I played them the song, and they had, within 5 minutes, the idea that we're going to go to Tokyo to film the video for this song. I was really happy because, video is obviously very important. Everything is video oriented today. Visual, when it comes to social media, video content and photographic content are king. People don't have even the time to read more than 160 characters in most posts, even whether it's Facebook or whatever. So I was very happy that we finally had the opportunity to do something. And I will be working with them more on further videos because I think that we have a good connection and we have a lot of great ideas about what we can do with songs. I've played them the whole album. They sat there and thought, okay, we have some ideas for this, and this, and I have my own, and I think we can really realize things. But it's important for me just to find the right partner. That's something I've always been looking for, and I just could not find. I'm picky because I think, in talking with a lot of bands, I think a lot of their videos they're just a video, or they had a lot of control over it, and they were able to create something that really related to their song. So I think other people have just been very lucky, but I think most of the videos I see for band songs are a video. They're not, they don't do anything.
And I look forward to more content as it comes out. This next question is entrepreneurial, especially for entertainment. And content creators, whether it's an artist, musician, or filmmaker, there needs to be a focus on being both the entrepreneur and in the creative arts. But most become disillusioned with making money fast instead of building legacy. In your opinion, given your accomplishments, what defines building legacy?
Not focusing on money as a goal. I think we've reached an era where a lot of people are focused on getting rich fast. Or they hear the success stories with advertising content and revenue from things like YouTube and what have you. Excuse me for a second. I have focused on making a product that I felt proud of. I have focused on, I think, if you're making a product, you have to focus on your product. You have to focus on the quality of it, the connection with your audience, and everything that is a consequence of that success will be financial, which is great because it finances tours and it keeps financing things. You have to have some kind of a business plan. Even if you're not business minded, you can make choices which make sense, but you have to have some kind of a business plan and some business sense. Most artists today, newer artists, are running their own business. They're starting themselves off and creating their own audience and their own fan base online. It's outside of the major label model. I run my own label. I manage everything within the band. I run the social media. I create the merchandise. I have control over all these things. Now, that may seem very, very daunting for a lot of artists because they don't have the experience with it. But I've seen the most successful bands doing their own business by having somebody, a friend, who is able to handle just the running of their operations, even if it's part-time. And this energy takes away from your creative output. I think it's important for artists to at least be involved, but to be realistic and not to complain about, that they're not getting money or they're not getting enough money or they're not getting rich fast. Money is not a goal in and of itself. It's a consequence. And it will be a consequence of success. Success is, if you want to build legacy, the thing that will stand for you in 10 years is the quality of your product and the connection you've made with people. If you don't have that, you won't have any legacy.
Absolutely. And I personally take that advice 100%, because even for content creators such as myself, creating articles and podcasts, that's one area that you have to provide focus on, creating your own brand, your own label, and recognition.
Absolutely. And the thing is, you also have to accept there is a caveat of that. You have to accept that maybe I'm not going to make money out of this. If your heart is in what you do, if you're doing something for passion and because you genuinely love it, it comes through. There's somebody who says to you, a silly example, someone who says, "Hi, how are you?" Simple statement. Mm-hmm. And they can say it in a number of different ways. They can say it like they genuinely mean it, or it's just an automatic sentence they say. You can tell the difference. When someone is passionate, it affects their content. It affects how they express it. It affects how they come across, the cadence, the intensity, the emotion in what they do. If I was doing a podcast about a hobby or a subject that I particularly love, and I was so fascinated and interested by it, this is what people want to hear. They don't want to hear some boring guy talking about something or some person talking about something that it sounds like they don't care about it, that they're just reading from a script. This is the difference. You are sharing a human emotion. I love the fact that podcasts have become so big because, to be honest, a podcast is like a radio show. Mm-hmm. It is the idea that and they're more popular in many ways than TV because people can listen to them in their cars, to listen to them in their bed before they go to sleep. All our crew, every single person has about 20 podcasts that they subscribe to. You will always find a great audience. You will, if you're passionate about it, if you talk about interesting things and you give insight into what you're doing, into what you're covering, people will gravitate towards it. Word will go around that this is interesting. It's no different with any content. If you show work, like you put effort into it, it will become successful. And that, again, comes back to the word, well, what is your definition of success? Is your definition of success money, or is your definition of success to reach people and share the contents of what you're talking about? If you're in music or video or computer graphics, or doesn't matter, if you're doing podcasts, if you're doing magazine articles, if you're curating images or curating content of any type, interesting articles, the more interesting, the more effort you put into it, because you just let your heart open and explore, and you keep that part of you that's still a child, that still feels a sense of wonder. You share your experience and you share your knowledge, that you're not patronizing, that you're still reachable and fascinating and interesting, then people will always want to hear, will always want to watch, will always want to listen. If you're not doing that and it sounds forced or it sounds pretentious, don't wonder why you're not successful. There's the other side to it, is not everybody is built for doing this. Mm-hmm. There are some people I know on YouTube whose the content I absolutely love, but their voice doesn't work. They can't, like one person speaks on a video, there's a series of videos I love watching, but he's reading it because he's insecure, and you know that, but he reads it without any grammar. So no full stops, no pauses, nothing. It's just one long sentence. And he's reading from a sheet in order to be able to do it. I met the guy, but he's reading it so that he can do it without being embarrassed. And he mispronounces words all the time because he's just reading it and shutting off his fears. And I think practicing, it's not going to work on the first go. Keep building, keep working at it, keep trying. And you will get it. But you know, like if I'm a singer, I have to work on my singing. I don't have to do professional lessons, but I have to work on it. I have to record it, listen back to it, and think about how to make it better. And if I'm doing that with spoken word, if I'm doing interviews, or if I'm doing a podcast, I have to work on my delivery because that's what people are connecting with. It's the way I would describe it is that if your speaking voice isn't going to reach people because it's either boring or annoying because of the way you deliver the words or something like that, then that's like writing a newspaper article in Comic Sans font. Nobody wants to read it. You know what I mean?
Right.
You choose a font that looks good. You choose graphics that look good. Well, then do the same thing with your voice.
Right.
And I think the caveat of that is that in the modern age, because we text so much, we don't speak on the phone anymore, and a lot of people don't talk to one another. But I think that's why a lot of people suffer. They don't have enough practice of speaking publicly, even if they're sitting in a room. Record it privately, listen to yourself, listen to how you deliver. Do you like it? Because if you like it, that's the first person who has to like it. If you don't like your voice, then you're going to have problems.
Right.
Anyway.
That's so true. Thank you for those inspiring mentorship right there. Thank you for that.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you.
On the music, your 10th studio album, Noir, brings a new perspective to the soundscapes of VNV Nation, in particular Nocturne No. 7, my personal favorite. Delivering classical influence on electronic heavy album. On the surface, what will audiences / listeners gather from this latest release?
I've heard, I gave some direction before the album came out. I said, please listen to it from beginning to end. I've always loved classical music, and it has been a very major influence in a lot of what I've done. Even if it's, modern music is a lot of repetition. I take phrases and I try to add something symphonic or something more formal and creative, as like colors on a palette, on a painting, just adding in touches and flavors to give it a dimension that I love. The funny thing was that when Nocturne No. 7 was written, I said, well, if I've got an album called Noir, I know that this track is going to be a little bit strange for a lot of people, but I believe that a nocturne must be on this album. I mean, the album is inspired in different interpretations of the concept of night, whether it's metaphorical or real. And a nocturne is, for me, a very important part of my personality, that I love classical and formal music. I think when I talk about that, a lot of people get the impression that VNV must be, if they've never heard us before, that it must be very classically oriented, and it's not, but there are a lot of elements incorporated into the music. I wrote that while writing the album, and I wrote it in one go. I was just musing on the piano, and I played that piece out for about 15 minutes, and when you're creating music and that happens, you don't let that chance go. No. You don't try to recreate it a second time. That piece is a replica. It's a microcosm of the whole album, because it tells a story on its own. It's going through different passages of memory. It's that kind of 2 o'clock in the morning, drinking drinking a glass of scotch, looking through photographs that you're remembering maybe in a very sentimental way. The wonderful moments of your past, or a particular time in your life, or something like that. And I felt that I was writing a soundtrack for that. And the thing is that the whole album is like that. If you step back, the whole album is like that. It's like a journey that's telling a story. So when I told people to listen from beginning to end, that it'll start off sinister and that it takes them through what they think is familiar territory. And most people listen to bands like they're listening for a sound or a style, but they're missing what's behind that, which is maybe something intellectual is being said and you're using the pieces to represent various elements of that. And I said, this album is going to take you up, down, left and right, backwards, forwards. It's going to surprise you. It'll take left turns that you did not expect. And that's exactly what happened with the Nocturne. Now, some people won't get that. There are other pieces on the album that have the same effect. Some people won't get it. Some people are very uneducated in music, and I got some very angry comments like, what the fuck is this track?
What? Oh my gosh.
This is the most stupid thing I've ever heard. Oh, yeah, no, seriously. There are some people like that. And my only response to it is not to be upset about it, but it's to say, my dear, this music was not made for you.
Right.
It really wasn't. So don't worry about whether you like it or not. It's not made for you. So, if you don't like it, just skip. A lot of people get angry about silly things that are irrelevant. And I think if you don't like something, just skip. That's it. You don't have to, nobody's forcing you to listen to it. But I was amazed at how many people felt that it fit amazingly into the album, because I always explain every track, your feelings about that track, I'm trying very hard to make you feel that, to set up a mood based on the previous track. So how you feel about the previous track is the mood you will be in when the next track starts. So it leads into Collide, which is one of my favorite tracks on the album that I think is a piece of symphonic heaven. For me, making that track was just something spectacular. So I felt it was very, very important that the Nocturne take you into another act of the album. And every part, it's almost like you're listening to the soundtrack to a film that's never been written, or this is the soundtrack to a book that's never been written. Somebody described it as art inspiring art, because each listening through the album, they said they were trying to imagine what kind of film this is for, or what kind of book this is for, what is the story.
Right.
And the artist has to add context. Noir was a concept that people used in the late 1800s, particularly in France, as writers, composers, and painters were. There is, as a creative person, if you're doing creative content, you can do it first thing in the morning. When you work late at night, a different creativity comes out. It's a very different energy, and night music is there's a sort of a. It's a psychological thing. It's an abstract thing. It's just an idea in your head, but there's something seductive about it. And it can take you to places that are undistracted, not distracted by anything else that's going on around the world. Like knowing in your head that everyone's awake, everyone's working, and the sun is up, and affects you in one way. When you feel that the whole world is asleep and everything's quiet and silent, and there's just the distant noise of traffic, and it's the dead of night, and you're working, you come up with, you reach a different part of your psyche. And I felt that trying to explain to people that this was the word that creatives were using at that time for that nighttime creativity, that nighttime psychology, that taking yourself on a journey through the self that maybe you don't want to go on, because it can open you up to parts of yourself you might not want to face. But it's something you have to go through, because it's like a journey through the underworld where you're being shown dioramas of sides of your psyche. And that's very much what the album represents for me. It's a journey through a voyage of very intense and sometimes uncomfortable and sometimes very rewarding self-discovery.
A current landscape in society. The last we spoke, we delved on the issues of AI, but another pressing topic is social media and its deterioration of human social interaction. What are your perceptions within the years to come with these platforms?
Well, I am the type who steps... the idea that we talk about deterioration is relativistic, because human interaction, human communication has evolved in many ways over millennia. And I'm the sort of person who steps back and asks, well, even just in the 20th century alone, we went from music halls to cinema, and then the music industry kicked off, and theaters were losing out to cinema, and then television came along and changed how we interacted and how we talked. Technology has always played a very significant role in how we communicate. I do believe that our individuality, which is our strength in many ways, it's the coming together as a team of individuals that somehow locks together, is the key to our diversity, diverse thinking.
Mm-hmm.
That is what promotes our progress.
Mm-hmm.
I think that social media is a blessing in one way, but when it is purely there for commercial gain, when the intent behind the technology was purely to give you a product, to sell to you, to keep you addicted to it,
mm-hmm.
that there are psychologists who work at these companies who think about ways to keep people wanting more, how their brain reacts to likes, how their brain reacts to seeing an image that inspires them that they want to copy. We've become a terrible culture of copycats, like people who want to, whether it's taking someone else's content and removing their logo and posting it as your own, because there's no ownership anymore. You're posting it as though you created it, or whether it comes to purely copying someone else's style and replicating it because you wanted to do it too, because you see someone else doing something creative, and you think, well, if I do that, I'm creative too, and it doesn't work like that. We've created shallowness.
Mm-hmm.
The true creatives find it harder and harder to find recognition, as to have their work gain recognition, because it's being so diluted by people who either copy it or just regard it as another throwaway 3-second experience. Oh, cool picture, wonderful. You know, in the past we would look at paintings, we would look at creative work, and we would be in awe of it because it was a reflection of our soul, not the person who created it. That person just learned how to tap into it. But we look at a painting, say if it's Salvador Dali or Rembrandt or I'm a big fan of French Impressionism, but I get lost in these paintings. And
mm-hmm.
yet the way art is presented today, I feel it's so throwaway because it's part of an experience that wants you to click the next one, keep clicking.
Right.
We want you to be like the hamster on the wheel. So one aspect that I'm very happy about is how this affected later generations. Meaning people from about 20 and under, I would say the maximum level 25, who in general don't use social media like the older generation. Mm-hmm. They don't use they don't care for Facebook, which to be honest was just a nice thing for office people to connect with each other and share silly pictures of birthdays and things like that. But it became so popular because the general masses were using it that everyone else had to use it. Mm-hmm. There was no alternative. And it has become, as we now know the sinister side of it was they were just selling our data. They were harvesting us. We were the products. I mean, mm-hmm. that was obvious to all of us from the beginning, except for the masses who sit back and think, really? Why? Why would they do that? And like, well, it was free. What the hell did you think it was free for? Do you know how much money it costs to create this system? And you think it's free? It's not the post office. It's not a public system. Mm-hmm. They were. I think we have modified ourselves, but we've gone through a great experiment in how we interact and how we work. The big challenge now for social media people creating the products is, how do I engage a younger generation that views social media as unnecessary?
Right.
That they're using Snapchat and other ways of communicating where they just share an emotion, like almost using a photo like we use a word to express how we're feeling. It's almost like iconographics have replaced a lot of how we communicate, that we communicate with much more complex forms through pictures, through sounds, through, hey, here's a song I like. Well, that says a lot about how I'm feeling right now. Here's a picture I like. Here's a clip out of a movie. Memes. These have become almost like hieroglyphics.
Yes.
For us. They express, this has become like the jokes we tell each other. Everyone's always told jokes to each other. So memes have replaced that. They become a completely new and actually very, very complex way of expressing our emotions. Mm-hmm. There's the way I described it was I could do a silly drawing back in, say, the 90s, or I could tell someone a simple joke, and now I can do it in 16.9 million colors and 24-bit. And the creativity of it and the humor and the genius and the originality has driven people to compete. So in many ways, while social media has actually stopped us communicating in an old-fashioned sense, it's created a whole new way of communicating for a generation beneath us, like, that's coming after us, that is not traumatized by the internet as we were. We were the first generation to get it in our homes and see people just screaming at each other and hating or sharing information. I started using the internet in 1990 as a dial-up system, and it was just the old monochrome green screen with like 6 options on it. One was electronic mail, and then 2 was Usenet or chat groups and things like that. And there was IRC, and there was just this simple, basic list of functions available on the internet. And already in Usenet, people were just screaming and ranting and raging because they couldn't cope with it, because this was a shock to their system. And I think a lot of our hatred and a lot of our poisons, the baby boomers dealing with the internet, nobody else. It's that poison that I see on the internet of people just trolling. It's just their anti-socialness, and it's response to the trauma that this exposure to the internet has given them. People can't handle it. It's funny, the internet was always seen as a great aid for antisocial or people with social disorders, people with social anxieties. They could sit behind a computer and anonymously communicate with the world. Everyone said, "Isn't this wonderful?" And I said, well, yeah, that's wonderful, but that's going to be about maybe 0.01% of the people who will love sitting behind a computer where nobody knows them, because the rest are going to use it to just spread, just to have fun, stupid, juvenile fun of just hating and trolling and bullying and what have you, which is exactly what happened. The generation that's come after, they use social media for personal experience, for sharing it with small groups, but they love personal interaction. These are traits I don't think that anybody in that age group likes to be generalized with, but whereas they have other problems to face, which are much bigger than ours. They will have huge amounts of debt and no ability to buy anything. And then they also have to face the fact that they really do genuinely care about the future. They genuinely care about where this world is going. They think in a longer term. They are much more conservative. They're financially conservative because they have to be. They're expressively conservative, like in their clothing and what have you. They don't like to stand out. Even the use of Snapchat in just sharing simple little silly ideas with a group of friends and being, it's a generalization, but I've seen it and heard it even from sociologists so many times that this is a wonderful evolution, that they have rejected this very poisonous bucket of, just shouting at each other that goes on the rest of the internet, because people post something. I don't read the comments. I don't want to read the comments because I learn nothing from them. I learn from the original post. I do not read comments on YouTube videos. I don't read comments on anything. I think I figured that out really fast, that most people will just be idiots online and don't know how to behave. There used to be a thing at the beginning of the internet, like public internet, which was netiquette, and you learned how to behave. You did not write in all caps. You had to obey, it was a kind of a mutually agreed system of how to speak to one another. And very few people broke that. But most people just behaved very civilly, and it just got completely out of control. So I think the fact that in 20 years, let's be honest, 20 years is since most people got it at home and it was farmed out. We have gone from talking to each other, calling each other, to having the sum total of knowledge of the world at our fingertips on a device that we put in our pocket, and we communicate in a completely new way. It's revolutionary. It's always happened. Whether it's good or bad remains to be seen, but I see hope that there is, that somehow we'll get over the trauma that it's caused, and it will promote something good. But one way or another, we've changed our slang. We've changed our way of communicating, the words, the value or the meaning behind words. we've always done it. All the internet has done is expedited that process.
Right. Yeah. And from my personal perspective, the social media platforms is a form of subliminal transhumanism. We have become so dependent to communicate on these platforms in a digital way that just dilutes emotion, and it touches on those topics that you had mentioned with comments on YouTube and so on and so forth.
Humans have changed. Humans have always changed over millennia. We've changed dramatically based upon the systems we were living in. We lived through the Dark Ages and very religiously conservative ages and in different parts of the world. We communicated differently based upon what the environment was. We adapted to it, but we always adapt. But then times came afterwards where the situation changed and people started to talk differently and freer. For us, looking back, we can see the parts where we say, oh, that was great, or that was wonderful, or that era was a little bit more open-minded. But no era, no decade was without massive social problems. There may have been light there, but look at the benefit for you is you have podcasts. Right. You have the control over your expression and your media. On one side, you have people doing podcasts about murder mysteries. Let's, for example, investigating real cases and getting people all over the world to get involved in investigating cases, like a kind of a group think. But there is huge amounts of intelligence being thrown at it, and people who want to participate, who think that's something I want to be involved in, are really exercising their deductive skills. On the other side, you have people who watch someone play a video game for 4 hours. And the thing is, when people say to me, like, are we becoming more stupid? I say, well, actually, no. Just how we express our intelligence and our stupidity has changed. Right. That's it. But I don't think anybody was under any illusions in the 80s that if we're making technology, if we're making computers, they're getting smaller, one day they're going to be integrated with us. Yes. Either there will be a huge Luddite movement where we will rebel against technology for all the ills that it's brought us. It's brought some incredible good. You ask anybody in an education field how the internet, who's been around for, say, 50 years, how much the internet has changed how they do things, they will tell you it's revolutionary. It's changed everything. It has made research, on an academic level, it's made research so much more polydimensional. We have become vastly international with our research, with the knowledge that is here, and learning about the work. We can collaborate in real time. The masses will always just use it for silly stuff. They always have. There will always be those people who will use technology for very intelligent things, and the masses will always use it for frivolous entertainment. Really, we don't. Maybe we, from our point of view, looking forward, we see where it could go and how bad it could be. I don't think there's ever any era where people thought any differently. I think in the 80s, an era of creativity that I'm really fascinated with in the American and the British and the every European country except for Germany's side. The Czechs and the French were really forward-thinking, but they were worried about how the new creativity was going to affect people and how it would change people. Every decade worried about, well, we're here now. We want it to stay like this. Right. But where we are right now is we're looking forward. We don't want it to change. But in 100 years, they will look back and it will all have been normal, just like the previous 100 years to us will have been normal. Where it goes is where it goes. You have to accept that. But I see hope in that trends indicate to me that, yes, some will integrate technology with themselves. Some people will augment themselves with either there will be some device that will enhance brain activity or muscular activity, and somebody will sell it to you with the idea that, oh, this person's in a wheelchair. If we do this, those people will be able to walk again. Right. They will not be the majority users. The majority users will be people who want to feel that they're better than someone else, which is, I think, the strongest motivation in my mind for human activity within humans. The strongest motivator in any social activity is the need for people to feel better than someone else.
While we're on the topic, I might as well just jump into this question. VR is a developing field and something I personally see transforming into, let's say, the holodeck on Star Trek. For music and content, specifically, let's say, a virtual reality music concert, what are your thoughts on this platform and perhaps integrating it into your content?
I will tell you that I was talking with people in major labels about 4 years ago, and I said, here's your $1 billion idea. Set up the highest quality VR cameras at different points in a venue. It could be a stick with the VR camera on top of it, and basically allow people to select their point in the audience and be at the show, physically experience the show, as if they were in the audience. You want to take it one step further, hire people to go to the show. You know, you want to offer an experience where everybody can go and visit, like watch some megastar play. Hire people who will be standing around each camera. Make sure that you've got your own placed people around them so that it ensures that there's people cheering, people screaming, and you have this artificial version of a real experience of going to a concert. You feel, wow, this is incredible. I can really do this. I think it's absolutely, it's without a doubt the next step for a lot of people that VR will take over from real experiences. I want to do I looked into this many times. How would I do this? How would I give people a VR experience of that they could stand on a stage, that they could stand there at the side and watch what happens as they flick around to being at different points of the audience. I think we all knew this in the 80s, that this is what was going to happen, that we would somehow tap into our sensory centers to be able to transmit the experience, whether it be the feeling, the inertia, the complete input of the experience of crowd surfing or jumping over a waterfall. Right. Or, I mean, we do this with the brain can play great tricks on us if we have a VR helmet on and we're going on a roller coaster. Yes. I think that technology will be probably more integrated into our lives than anything else. I think the next generation of phones could possibly be contact lenses. There's so many ways we can do this, but I want to do a show next year. Speaking of my own personal experience, if I may, I've been invited to play at a planetarium, and it's not a very big auditorium, but it's a wonderful planetarium. They do a beautiful star show, and they asked if they could create a special show for this, so say maybe an hour and a half of music, and I would perform with, and I want to do this with all my keyboards, all my synthesizers, and what have you. I thought that would be a splendid experience, but in the hall they have a very, very high-tech 360-degree camera, and I said, wonderful, you mean we can do this as a VR experience? And they said, yes. I said, all right, let's do this. So the interesting thing is, and it always comes down to what we were talking about with success. Yes. If you're going to do a concert like that, you have to also think about the monetary value, because there will be pioneers who will start to sell their concerts on YouTube, on a Red channel or whatever else, say, hey, you know, you can go to the concert, but you have to buy it from home. Like we all did, you know, people do this with sports events. They do pay-per-view sports events. Well, what's wrong with doing pay-per-view concerts? It will save on a lot of logistics. It will save on touring. It will save on a lot of things. And I honestly think it could possibly replace air travel. It could possibly cut down how we actually visit places from our home, and we go on vacation from home without ever having to visit somewhere. I mean, we're just into speculation and conjecture, and futurism is a guessing game. Right. But I don't see why that's not possible. I think the entertainment industry is waiting to see that VR penetrates the market a lot more, and it's not just in the hands of geeks before they can really farm it out, because they're not looking for the people with the Oculus Rift or something like that. They're looking for the absolute masses driving their car, using it as a completely immersive experience every day of their lives, because the minute they give them VR, the masses and they can sit in their car. The car's automated. They will zone out of the world, and the world will never be good enough.
Absolutely.
Nothing in this world will ever be good enough, and people will spend. There will be way too many people spending all of their time. I've been watching VR grow since, the 80s. I was fascinated by it and always hoping that this would provide incredible content and entertainment for people. But to be honest, I know that it's going to get used for frivolous, stupid things. But then again, I'll be able to take a holiday in the Seychelles. I'll be able to, jump over a waterfall. I'll be able to hang glide. I'll be able to parachute jump.
Right.
I'll be able to just sit on a beach. I'll be able to come home from work and do that for 2 hours and totally chill out. And my brain will think that I'm there. And it will adapt and accommodate the idea that I am there every night after work. And it will make boring work much more palpable, but it will be a great way to keep workers distracted, sated. It's going to become a narcotic on an incredible level. I think that's really what VR could potentially do, because it's always about how much money you can make out of the technology, not about how pragmatic or how benevolent it is. Bands, I think, really could get in on this game, but I have looked into the technology. It takes a lot of investment and a lot of high-tech work, and that's really the realm of the major labels, is that they have that money, they have the access to technology. And I've thought about this, doing concerts where we can put on the best show possible, and we could give away free tickets so we can guarantee that there's a massive audience. Then if we need to repay that, sell tickets for it online. But, I mean, how many people have VR helmets?
Right.
The market penetration just isn't there for it to be justified. They're trying it, but VR has always taken off and then fallen, and then taken off and then fallen. So I think a lot of people just don't like the idea of wearing a giant, not a helmet, but excuse me,
sure,
wearing hefty goggles and earpieces in order to experience something. You really have to. All the TVs have to be VR. And there won't be TVs anymore. You have to have a VR device at home, and everybody has to have one in their home before this becomes financially viable.
Right. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I had the experience, the Art of VR exhibition here in New York City in Sotheby's, and I was blown away by the technology. It's still in its infancy, but I do adhere to all the points that you have made. It's something that's really is going to change the landscape for media content.
Oh my God, yes. Absolutely. To be able to visit the Louvre, to be able to visit the Guggenheim,
right,
and stand there and stare at a painting and feel I am there, I'm in this room, because it's not like I'm just looking through a letterbox image that I can turn around. I'm actually immersively there, peripheral vision included. I will be able to, I think for many people it will be enhanced to the point that it's better than the real experience. I mean, we Photoshop everything, so imagine enhancing your experience of visiting some gallery or wherever. Walk around a forest. I think that is the revolution that will change humanity far more than anything. I mean, to be able to communicate with people, that you'd be able to have conversations like, okay, imagine just something as simple as phoning, that the person is physically there in front of you. Now, if that's your contact lenses, if that's a pair of glasses, or something like even a sensor on the side of the head, and I've seen tech that does this, where it can feed content to the brain. That, again, was in its infancy. But imagine you're 20 years down the road and somebody perfects the idea of, well, with a small little adapter, you can feed video signals to the brain. You actually think you can have an illusory content. I mean, why not? That's even better than VR. But to be able to sit there and put on like a pair of glasses sitting on the couch, and you're phoning with someone and they're sitting in front of you. You're just basically, VR will just be a means to an end between transmitting physical images into all around you, that your entire apartment can change, as you say, like a holodeck. We don't necessarily need to live in large spaces anymore. We won't need to live in large apartments. We won't need all this content because all of our experience can be all around us. It can be whatever we want. We can decorate as we wish. If we want our apartment to look like we're on the beach, it'll look like we're standing on a veranda on the beach. The potential is endless, but it is still, unfortunately, in its infancy, and the eyewear, to be honest, I compare it to cell phones in the late 80s.
Yes.
It's too unwieldy, it's chunky, because, and let's be honest, this technology is still in its infancy, and it really hasn't evolved past a large, hefty piece of eyewear.
Exactly.
It's an amazing experience, but 3D fails, and I think VR will fail if we don't invest in research to come up with new forms of technology which can feed the image either onto the eye. That's something that's possible. I know that through some interesting research I read about.
Okay.
You can project images onto the eye, and so it can become a peripheral experience that you see it like if you're the idea that your peripheral vision is completely filled, that you are, as far as you're concerned, 360 degrees all around you, the world exists, that you honestly believe you're there. The brain will adapt. The brain will think it's physically on a roller coaster, nausea and all, and or that you're doing something quiet, like just sitting somewhere reading a book. I actually think that is far more exciting to me in terms of how we interact with the world than anything else, because then the reality, like physical limitations of what we can do as far as concerts are concerned, that's out the window.
Right.
We can then create whatever the hell we want.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
then you could go and watch dragons fighting while a band sings or rides them or whatever else. You know what I mean?
Right. That is so true. It's comical, but it's so true. This next question, entrepreneur and entertainment. Authenticity is a key word, especially in this ever-growing landscape of music genre, particularly mainstream music. Define the importance of having your own voice, figuratively, of course, when it comes to creating a brand.
It depends on the product. It depends on the expression. Some people work great being mysterious and unreachable. Some people are more suited to being accessible and down to earth and opinionated. I like to stay away from politics. I think about just the general psyche of the day, not the individual players. The general psyche of the day interests me more than anything because that's the spirit of an age. And that will inspire what comes next. There are some people who like to side with whether they have opinions about, I've been expressing my opinions about humanity and technology here with you for the last, good hour. So it's important for context. Authenticity is that you do know what you're singing about, or if you're creating something that you're not just doing it arbitrarily, but you're doing it for a reason, that there was a soul need inside you. I think in our age of fake, and there is so much of it, and we know so much of it is fake. We know people on Instagram have just manipulated an image or just staged an image in order to look like, oh my God, my life is amazing. And my take on it is, no, you're an empty, shallow person and you hate yourself.
Right.
And because if you were truly satisfied with yourself, you wouldn't need to have this affirmation through the public and having to set up these wonderful images to make it look like you're this wonderful world traveler. Because I've done world travel. I've done, I travel constantly, and the wonderful experience of travel is not like the Instagram image. If I see another person doing heart hands in front of a sunset, I'm thinking that they're terribly deep. It's, you know exactly what I mean. It's like, this is the garbage where people have like handwritten fonts over the top with some inspiring phrase, which means absolutely nothing. It's deep and meaningless. But the authenticity has, I think, become almost like gold. It's like the the elixir of youth, the alchemist's secret, the final elixir that we're in search of, because it's a rarer and rarer commodity. And I found, people come up and talk to me after a concert, and I'm not talking about myself and slapping myself on the back, but you know me, and I'll speak my mind, and just have a chat with anybody, and I've got no problem with it. I don't hide myself away from people. But if somebody comes and talks to me, and I start talking about my own personal experiences and explaining why the song is like this, and and whatever, and they're actually hearing this, and a lot of people are very taken back by that. Some people find it weird. They find it, was that rehearsed? And I said, no, we're just having a conversation. I love conversation. Talking is important. Because they don't find that authenticity anywhere else. And it's not about being authentic. Authentic, it's funny that we need to use the word authentic. I believe it's just that we only use it because the majority of things we know to be fake. Right. So we need to use the word authentic as almost the exception, rather than fake as the exception. It's a very interesting concept that we have to put up with. Most of our media is manipulated. It's ratings oriented, or politics is ratings oriented, and it's just really to get people to cheer for somebody. But to actually be able to interact with people and talk about a song that means a great deal to them, if it's an art piece, if it's a piece of visual art, to have an artist talk through their work so you get a sense for their intellectual level in creating the piece. Those things, I don't even think they're important. I just think they're obligatory. I meet bands obviously all the time, and I don't need to have musicians as friends. I don't necessarily. That's not just because we have that in common does not mean we're going to be buddies. Intellectual prowess or whatever their interests. I mean, one of the guys who's on tour with me at the moment, he's an avid amateur physicist and absolutely fascinated by physics. Wow. Another guy is a champion jazz pianist, and he talks about music theory and goes through the mathematical side of music, the harmonic side of music, and he really gets very, very deep into it, and then the soul and the beauty of it. Another person is just interested in football, and everybody sort of has their own little their element. But the thing that I really like about it is that they each have their passion, and each are as authentic as possible. And yet I've met bands where I asked, "Who's this song about?" And went, "Well, I just wrote the song." And I went, "Well, okay, but you gave it a girl's name. Why?" Right? Yeah, exactly. It just sounded cool. I thought, just sounded cool is not an answer. Right. I think if there was anything more needed, it's more honest expression. But I find that coming in the underground, we're getting back to the whole thing of bands and artists creating their own thing and putting it out. Exactly. It's not necessarily for attention, because it's not to create music and to create something that's really different and interesting is not easy. That comes from the soul, that comes from practice. It's not a crowd pleaser. You just have to, the only thing that will work is do your own thing. Do it with your heart and your soul in it. Make it your own, even if it's inspired by other people. Don't copy, but take inspiration. We all stand on the shoulders of giants. My music is not existing in and of itself. It's another point in a long line of music evolution. But I'm taking sounds I've heard, melodies I've heard, and feelings that I got from them and try to recreate those. It's a language. And it's a very, very eloquent language. And I just can't stand I can't deal with it. It's just beyond my conception when someone says, it's just a cool song. I'm like, okay, but does it feel good when you play it alone? And they go, yeah, well, there you go. At least we have that, at least there's that experience that you felt good making it. That's some honesty in there. Right. But when you look at what major labels put out, where they create fake personas, they create the adorers, people honestly believe that these people are operating their own Twitter accounts. It's just ridiculous. The entire thing is as fake as it gets. Right. It is a perfectly constructed, fictitious being. and fictitious personality, fictitious drama, fictitious arguments and social life and, you know, relationships and everything is just bought and created. It's frightening as to how the level that those people operate on. But authenticity comes from the grassroots. Authenticity and honesty will come from people who are just making something in their bedroom and thinking, I like this, I want to share this. Those people have always been wonderful. And then there have been a lot of people who've copied. We've always done it. They were always there, whether it was Picasso making a picture and other people said, oh, Cubism, I'm going to do that, and just copied it.
Mm-hmm.
At least you know with the original was authentic, and you can see it in the work. Copy just doesn't have that, because a copy just lacks the heart.
Precisely. It's the emotional context. I totally agree. And for Noir, 10th studio album, and I think, in my opinion, there seems to be no pause in your work schedule with concerts and studio sessions. Would there ever be a pause?
The last studio album was 2013. I took a bit of a break from that for actually a reason. I would have probably motored on. Mm-hmm. So it was Providence that I had to take a break. I was in a building where the foundations started to, how do I put it, moisture or water in the ground started to amass around the building because another building had been built next to it. Mm-hmm. And it started seeping up through the walls. This activated mold to start growing in the building, which nobody could see, nobody could sense, and it was toxic. My mycotoxin level was not even just dangerously high. When they finally found out what was affecting me, I was tired. I had brain fog, a lot of things going on. I felt inflammation, swelling, and my vocal cords were swollen. My neck was swollen. I felt sick all the time. It was like I had an aching headache, and I didn't know what the problem was. When they finally found out what it was, I was ordered to leave, and I was told, "You're not even going back to the building. Like, you will die. Your mycotoxin level is so high." Now, we've gone through all the treatments for that and everything like that. And then the next thing beyond that was Resonance, the orchestral album. Mm-hmm. I don't regard these as work schedules and I mean, there's a lot of touring in between that. There isn't really the feeling of 3 months even where I'm doing nothing. I'm constantly working on something, but I'm not killing myself. I mean, when I go into a 9-month schedule for an album, I know I'm going to be giving it my all, and I'll be working from 7 in the morning until 11 at night. Okay. And even if I'm at home, my brain is still on it. My brain is still thinking about things. And I can't help it. I just get completely immersed in it. I have 3 projects set up for next year. They will be fantastic to work on. One is, I will not talk about yet, but it is a gigantic project. Ooh. And will take me further than things I've done before. I also want to work on remixes for the album because I enjoy them. I have fun with it. And I like keeping on working, but I always take breaks. But I haven't done a studio album since 2013, and I think it paid off in that, doing Noir in 2018. Even though Resonance was 2015, and a lot of touring in between that, it's really paid off in that it allowed me time to focus, gather my energies, but make a lot of changes in my life that really affected me a great deal. I started to meditate a lot more. Mm-hmm. I started to change my perspective on a great deal of things. I really moved a lot of poisonous people out of my life, people who I tolerated. And then in the end, I said, why am I even tolerating that when I can have somebody who's at least, I don't have to agree with them. I don't want yes people around me, but people who are more harmonic to my disposition. I can create a nice, benevolent environment around me. I don't have to work with people who are detrimental to my energies, so to speak, like whether it's just distracting or taking up energies or creating dramas that are unnecessary. So it made a lot of changes in my life. I loved making Noir, although it was a very intense process. It was profoundly satisfying, profoundly rewarding. Touring doesn't feel like work. Sometimes it does. You do 4 shows in a row and it feels like, I really need a break. Break today, day off today, day off tomorrow. But when I go back, I'll be home on the 17th of December, and I have until the end of January before I go off for another month tour. And after that, it's just a festival here and there. So to be honest, I will have breaks, and I'm going to take my break very seriously. I'm going to take my month and a half to myself, and it will be, I'll putter around the studio. I'll do some accounting. I'll have to do all that stuff for the end of the year. But I've worked nonstop since the beginning of this year on the album. And I mean long, long days and really keeping at it. And although it felt it was writing itself and I wasn't struggling with it at all, it was this flow. I went from that straight onto tour, week and a half break, which was all preparation and logistics and constant phone calls, and then another month of tour in North America. It can exhaust you very easily. And it's very important to make sure that you don't burn out. Very important to ensure that you stay mentally healthy. So, I mean, I'm going to take a break for some sunshine over New Year's, which is, I can't wait for that. I want some hot weather, and I want sunshine and lots of vitamin D. It's going to be, I don't worry about my work schedule. I know that I've got 3 major projects next year, and they're going to be fun. They're going to be creative. They're going to be deeply rewarding. But I do take my breaks. I do make sure that I get enough time for me, and not just, vegging on the couch time, but something with substance.
Exactly.
I do a lot of vintage things. I'm really big into this, the other side of me that a lot of people know about, but I have vintage cars, and I have, I don't go in for this whole rock and roll, rockabilly, hot rod thing. I'm more into the, how do I put it, into the foxtrot era, the sort of the jazz era, so the 20s and 30s, and I'm involved in a ton of events that do this, where everybody, tens of thousands of people show up all dressed to the nines from every corner of the world. It is brilliant. I made friends from Thailand, Ghana, Japan, people coming from everywhere wearing all these clothes from another era and just living out their just being happy. And everybody was it was all very formal and very, very sweet and very polite and reliving the etiquette of a bygone age. And everyone's very good-natured with each other and very, very polite and mutually supportive and helping one another. And it's just a beautiful thing. That's my hobby. That is complete. I got crazy about that stuff. So
that sounds like what cosplayers do nowadays.
Exactly. Yeah, I suppose it is my cosplay. There's no kind of detective. There's no cheesiness to it. There's none of this people pretending they're a gumshoe detective out of the hard-boiled novel in the 40s or something like that. It isn't about that. It's about an era of sophistication and an era of, even though not everybody was able to live like that, it isn't about going back and reliving the snobbery. It's going back and living all of the beautiful, overly decorated, but also just the era of formality when people walked up and shook hands. And it's a lot of British people involved, so everyone's like, how do you do? And they talk even in old styles. It's phenomenal. But I've made some of the best friends in the world through it. And we have all our cars, we have our picnics, we do all that kind of crazy stuff, like going back and really, really reliving each other's kind of past and having the best fun with it. We just absolutely love it. And there are people who are executives of companies and people who are waiters and people who are mechanics and people who are working in call centers. And everybody participates, and it doesn't matter what you do. Everybody's on the same level, and there's people from all over the world at these things. And they happen in North America, they happen in Europe, all over, mainly in Britain. They also happen in Paris. They happen it's absolutely phenomenal. The music, we get to hear all these incredible jazz bands. And it's just, that's a holiday in itself. That's something I love. And I do road trips in America. I've got a 48 Chrysler coupe, and I've got a 1938 Nash in Europe, and we just have tons of fun, just experiencing, just living life as it, not in a perception of how it used to be. I don't like that idea of that the bygone age was better.
Right.
Like there's some fictitious past that was wonderful. It's just there were jazz festivals, or there were there were things going on like at the time where people would go out to a big event and everybody would dance and everybody would just drink and be merry and have fun times. And I've seen that a lot in how people spent their spare time back in the 20s and 30s, no matter what their culture, their race, whatever. It doesn't matter what part of the world they lived in. People in Shanghai, pretty much, which used to be known as the Paris of the East, they would spend their time doing the most wonderful things, and they would go out and truly, genuinely enjoy themselves. So we're kind of honoring that spirit. But everybody is incredibly creative, and when the modern world creeps in and people have to check their phones or whatever else, people start talking. I've seen people make business deals. People who are incredibly creative people meet up and you introduce one to another and you say, you're working in the same field, and they start interacting and having the most amazing time. And it's funny how that works. Human interaction. Yes, beautiful.
It goes back to our earlier topic.
Exactly. It all comes from, that's the thing about noir. I don't know if you've noticed this, but the album starts off, it starts with 1 million and it ends with All Our Sins. And there's a similarity. There is an intentional connection between both pieces, even though they are different. One starts off as a sinister, sort of almost threatening drone with this hard machine room beat, and All Our Sins does a very similar thing, but it's very orchestral, and it builds up very, very slowly and makes it it's quite poignant about where we stand as a species, that we're really on the brink of our own extinction. It's not about the modern age. It's not about any particular person. It's just a commentary on where we are now that we've gone through the journey. Now to stand and examine, right, where are we going? What are we doing now? We know all this. The album is cyclical. In fact, there's a lot of hidden references and there's a lot of hidden technique in the album. I had the person who played the Nocturne, going back to that piece, Shimon, who's my classical pianist, who plays on all of my classical concerts, all the orchestral concerts, and played on the Resonance album. He was listening to it. He said, "This is really interesting. You've got this in 4/4 time," but he said there are hidden rhythms within it. And I was like, "Well, yeah," and that happens throughout the album. That there are, for example, layered competing patterns and cycles and loops that are happening either through series of tracks or within tracks themselves. There's this incredible amount of everything ties together. Everything is like a cyclical pattern that one goes through, and whether it's the album or whether it's individual tracks, everything is a microcosm of each is a microcosm of one of the other.
Right, and also, from my perspective, I seen the album art, and I did sense the symbolism there, and I see a sense of duality with the use of neon lights, and the title of the album itself is Noir. So I get that duality there.
I actually wanted it to look like a neon sign, which was something that people would use to decorate. It was when it was invented, people used it for incredible artistic purposes. There were amazing art installations with neon back in the 20s. But then everything would decorate itself with this neon. It would look just so much more elegant and so much more bright. But neon, even though it can seem somehow tempting and somehow it's wonderful, when you actually see it, it's a very cold and very lifeless light. It lacks it lacks some kind of feeling. But when you see it from a distance, you see it decorating a street, it's a beautiful thing. But to actually see neon up close, it casts a very odd light on other objects around it, and it makes everything look sort of greenish or grayish. I've been in places where the neon on the building top was reflecting on low-lying clouds, and the clouds had gone the same color as the neon on the roof of a building. And I mean, I really went into the whole neon experience in the last year. There is an incredible documentary which I would love you to look up. I don't have the name right now, but it's a gentleman who's European, went to Hong Kong to make movies and ended up making action movies where he would use the neon of the city as the unwritten cast member. And he would use the light of neon in all of the little alleyways, the little kind of like plazas and, small little groups of shops or whatever as the lighting for his movies. And it cast this incredible light. His psychology and his take on neon is fascinating. But going back to me, I wanted it to look like this elegant sign as you would have, say, on a nightclub or an establishment or something like that back in the time. But on the wall of a machine room in the basement of a disused factory, I wanted there to be an irony that you would have a neon sign that's out of place. That's almost like trying to seem, hey, look, isn't this all bright and elegant and exciting in the most unspectacular of places, the most barren of places. It's almost like trying to shine a torch in a vast, vast darkness.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was considering getting the album just as a piece of artwork. That's it itself.
I actually have a version of the cover, which, I love the artwork that was created on the inside. Mikhail Karsh did the most beautiful imagery for the inside of the album. There's this one picture of me wearing a 30s tuxedo standing in the middle of a pile of, like, carnage. And it's the most beautiful image. And he did an incredible series of black and white images for the album that are absolutely spectacular. That really lent to adding to the ethos, or even having the VNV logo in neon was fantastic. The person, Rada, who worked on the neon for the album, he had created a beautiful, beautiful piece, and then my friend Mikhail Karsh did the wall for it, and he created this spectacular texture to give it just so much detail and grain and just organicness. And that's what I wanted, the sort of trying to make decay look somehow attractive. How putting this lovely sign on it, this beautiful, like what we associate neon with, is like, come on, it's exciting, come on in here, it's beautiful. And yet you have this decaying concrete wall behind it. And I want to put this out as an art print. I do like limited edition prints, and I have a wonderful printer in Hamburg that I can work with on this. And I really want to put this out as a piece of art, but with a much larger wall. So you just, in the center of it, you have the sign and you see the room and you get a sense of, if you look long enough at the picture, you can start to see the details of what's around you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for your time. And I've been practicing this Irish word. I hope I'm pronouncing it the right way. Sláinte.
Oh, Sláinte go bra. So you say good health and I say good health, beautiful good health back. So there you go. Thank you very much. Or as we would say in Gaelic, God of Mina Mahagat, which means may there be 1,000 thanks to you.
Segment 2. Nostalghia.
Our second interview is with recording artist Nostalghia, and her story from the cliched rags to riches story is not so cliche. This is a story that many musicians, artists, filmmakers find themselves in a predicament where they don't want to be in the 9-to-5 worker bee mentality, but instead want to pursue their dreams and creative, and to explore and to flourish their creative endeavors. Here is an excerpt from Nostalghia's bio to give you, the listener, the audience, a glimpse on the evolution of Nostalghia from the bottom and climbing that ladder to top. Fascinating, very inspiring. Just 6 years ago, California Iranian native Nostalghia found herself homeless in North San Fernando Valley. After breaking into a dingy piano room to sleep for the night, her life would change forever. At that time, the untrained siren didn't even know she could sing or play. But that piano in that room, in that time, would teach her everything she would need to know. Soon after, she met collaborator Ronan, and they released their first independent album, Chrysalis. Nostalghia is now releasing Imago, another album that features and showcases her artistics. Nostalghia explains these emotional contexts in our conversational interview. And for those that aren't aware, Nostalghia is featured on both John Wick films. If you rewatch the film, you would see the music, you see the performance and hear Nostalghia's music there. And do pick up Imago, and it really fascinates me, and it's amazing to showcase and her story to you, the listener, and the audience, to really gather and say to yourself, yes, it is possible to reach the dream, but also don't dream too much. You have to grind, and in order for you to succeed in whatever it is that you want to achieve in this life. Our topics in this conversational interview include her upcoming album, Imago, as well as advices for content creators and also building legacy, and her opinion on being authentic, especially as an entrepreneur and recording artist. Once again, thank you for your time for this interview, and it's a pleasure to really delve into your career and your music.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
To kick off the interview, let's begin with your origin story. I read your bio provided by your PR rep, but I think listeners should really pay attention to how you emerged from homelessness to success. Tell us a little about that.
I was a bit rebellious, and I really knew that I wanted to be an artist, but I didn't really know what that meant. And I ended up getting kicked out of my house at the time. And the only real place that I had to go, well, I suppose I had many places, but I was a bit stubborn too, and I didn't want to just end up on any friends' couches. So I ended up staying in this tiny piano room on a college campus. I was trying to go to college and was really not that interested in any of it, any kind of scholastic learning. Just I had a real big aversion to it. But I was trying to go to college, and I found these piano rooms and thought, wow, these are open all night long. I might as well stay here. And I, at the time, had no idea that music would be, I was a dancer for many, many years, but I didn't know music would ever be something that I would end up doing. So I stayed in one of these really tiny piano rooms, and because there was a piano in there, I started teaching myself how to play. And I began putting all of the words that I had always written. I was always a writer. All the poetry that I had always written. And I started putting it to music. And in that room, I really realized I might be able to sing. And I didn't really know that before that moment. I knew I could sort of carry a tune, but it was almost as though something much bigger was coming through me. And it became really clear that that was all I could do. At least during that time, that was what I had to do. And so I started writing songs, and they came really, really quickly to me. And soon after, I began looking for a music partner to work with, who is Roy Ganan, now the same person that I work with now.
That is amazing. And one thing I'd like to do for interviews is really delve into the person behind the project, whether it be film or in this circumstance, music, because listeners, as audiences, we don't get to connect personally. And your story is so inspirational. When I read it from the press release, as wow, many would definitely benefit, because there's so many artists, whether it be painters, musicians, film directors, that are in the same predicament that you were several years ago.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm glad. I hope I can be an inspiration to some.
With the landscape of music, especially mainstream, for example, we have teams of people that say what to wear, what lyrics to sing. What, in your personal opinion, defines being authentic?
I suppose authenticity is just being true to yourself. But the trick here is that a lot of people don't really know who they are beyond the layers that they're taught to believe in of themselves. So you have to really kind of have the tools to go deep within yourself. And I think some people, they just have an innate inability to be anything but themselves. And others have to work a lot harder to find the core of themselves. So it really just depends on how many layers you've built upon your soul and your spirit. In my case, there were certainly pieces that I had to let go of, and insecurities that I had to let go of to truly tap in to who I am and who I was. However, there was always a really, really very clear, defined purpose, and it was very obvious from a pretty young age that I was who I was, and I wasn't about to just simply wear those clothes because you tell me that I have to, or sing those things because you say that's what's going to sell, etc. So I have a pretty strong stance in who I am as an artist and who I am as a person.
Absolutely. And especially with today's landscape where we have social media at our disposal, every content creator is basically a brand, and they have to sell themselves appropriately to symbolize who they are as a brand, as a label of authenticity.
Certainly. Mm-hmm.
Being a musician, especially an independent musician, also has its accompanied responsibilities, the daily grind, the daily hustle. What are your views on legacy, especially as an entrepreneur and as an artist?
I think it's very, very difficult for artists because they aren't supported in ways that I believe they could be. And so this idea that you stay as an independent artist requires that you're more than an artist. And I have to be more than an artist because I've stayed independent. And what that means to be more than an artist is you have to think in numerous different facets. You have to think as a business person, as a businesswoman. You have to think, how am I going to sustain myself? How am I going to get a team together for this music video? How am I going to, et cetera? How am I going to get on this tour, et cetera, And we do have a team of people. However, a lot of it, when you don't have a label, does land on you, and in this case, on me and my partner, Roy Ganan. So you have to be very, very, very strong and very clear on the fact that you, as a human being, your biggest goal is to stay true to yourself. And if that means for some people that they make their money in another way, then that's what they should do. And then they do music on the side. Now, that's an incredible amount of work, and that's a choice that you have to make. Or perhaps some of us, which I've been able to do so far, you figure out a way to make money from the music by growing your audience. And you're not going to be super rich. Maybe one day you will, but I'm certainly not rich at this point, but you do it because you absolutely have to do it. And you're not here to necessarily be famous. You're here because you have a very clear message, and you're not going to allow anyone else to tell you what that message should be. And so that's where I stand. And for me, all the artists that I've truly loved, like PJ Harvey or Nick Cave or Leonard Cohen, they seem very, very authentic in what they came here to do. And that's what they do. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to do exactly what it is that I do best, because nobody else can do that but me. And so as soon as someone tries to pigeonhole you in something that they feel comfortable with, something that they've known before, they absolutely destroy you as an artist. And I'm not saying that that hasn't happened to me. That has happened to me a couple of times, and luckily I pulled out of it. But, you know, it's just beyond all the whispering words that you hear from the industry. If the loudest one is your own heart, that to me is a legacy artist. That to me is someone who's being true to their craft.
That is very inspirational right there. And it's so true, and it resonates. And I'm glad that we're in the stage right now that most of the decisions falls upon the indie artist. And I foresee that's going to rapidly change, and the major labels are going to take notice of that soon.
I definitely think so. I mean, a lot of the things that we've known before are just kind of business models that don't work anymore, and it is changing. Music is now pretty much free, and people are trying to find alternative ways of being able to do what they do what it is that they love without having someone breathe down their neck, without that producer. I mean, why not be your own producer? I'm not saying it's bad to have a producer, but if you're someone with a really, really strong vision, you might be the only person that's going to truly be the visionary of your own art. So I think what's really wonderful is that there are outlets like Pledge Music or whatever other crowdfunding platform that you're on. It really allows the artists to work with the audience that they have and put out exactly what it is that they want to put out.
Absolutely. And jumping on to your work on both John Wick, hopefully a trilogy in my opinion, but both John Wick films, how does your collaboration on this film projects help promote and elevate your standing as a recording artist?
Well, it just broadened my audience, and there's plenty of people that heard about me and saw me in the film that wouldn't have otherwise heard about me and seen me. So, you know, whenever you can take an opportunity like that, assuming that it's an opportunity that you want to partake in, then, you know, it's just another way for you to reach more people.
Right. And that's one of the instances of being at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, sometimes I happen to be at the right place at the right time. Other times not so much, but every now and again. Actually, often I've been at the right place at the right time. And perhaps always.
Right. And for some aspiring artists, or artists in general, they often wait so long for the opportunity to happen. They say, well, I'm going to vision this, and it's all part of the daily grind, and it falls on your lap when you least expect it.
Part of manifestation is doing the work that's involved to get where it is that you want to go.
Absolutely. And you mentioned crowdfunding. We're going to jump into this next question. With your upcoming album, Imago, you opted to using crowdfunding to fund this album, getting it off the ground. Is this part of the philosophy? I read somewhere that you had mentioned of keeping your finger on the pulse. Is this part of that technique in your philosophy?
I don't remember when I said that, but I like that. Yeah, I definitely could reflect that. I, for a long time, was pretty against crowdfunding, and I had an aversion to it because I felt like it brought me too close and it made me feel too exposed. And then I realized, what are you trying to hide? Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of artists that seem very financially successful on the outside are really struggling on the inside. And once I got to tour with enough people and be around enough artists, I really realized, wow, a lot of these people that seem like they've got everything going on, they're just getting by. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the audiences don't really know that. And these audiences are people that want to empower the artists they love. They want to be a part of their world and their universe. So why try to live in this constructed bubble and not reach out for a partnership with your fans? Why do that? Well, perhaps you wouldn't do that because you want to still keep that ego afloat. And in reality, this comes down to humanity as a whole. We have to help each other. We have to be there for one another. Whether it's an artist that you love or a person that's losing their home to a fire or someone that you see on the street that's struggling, why wouldn't you want to reach out? And why wouldn't you reach out your hand when you need it? And so I had a whole new perspective on this, in that you're not a beggar when you're asking for something that is really just asking for collaboration and partnership and union with the fans that love you. Why go towards a business model that doesn't love you, that's really just trying to steal from you at the end of the day? Why go there instead of where there's love? It didn't make sense to me. I wholeheartedly believe you go where there is love. Where there is no love, there's no way.
And with your soundscapes that you're presenting to your audiences, what would they be expecting with your new album, Imago?
It has a lot of cinematic moments and also a lot of really intimate moments. Whereas the first album kind of had a more cerebral electronic feel, this one has a very emotive and sensitive and also cinematically impactful feel. And I was just astounded at some of the orchestration that my partner Roy was able to come up with. And, we work together on everything. We produce it together. We do the music together. I write the lyrics and vocals, and sometimes come to him with songs, or sometimes he comes to me with music. And so it was really, this album, we really got to have our hands on every little detail. We mixed it, we mastered it, we produced it. So it's definitely the next step in the evolution of Chrysalis. It makes sense that it's called Imago.
Reading from the press kit for Imago, you describe the moth as a metaphor to adapt, to survive, and to live. Is this one of the philosophies also presented in Imago and your upcoming works that you will be releasing?
The albums are all under the umbrella of the concept of metamorphosis. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with what a chrysalis is?
No, do enlighten me though.
Okay, so a chrysalis is the outer shell of a pupa. It's like a cocoon. It is a cocoon. Mm-hmm. And so it's the hardened outer shell when a pupa is gestating before it's to be birthed into the world, right? So chrysalis had a more insular feel. It had a more controlled feeling to it. Imago is the fully winged insect in full bloom. So to me, it represents womanhood and kind of coming out of that chrysalis and really spreading my wings and being exactly what it is that I am. So they go together under that concept of metamorphosis. And metamorphosis even ties into a greater landscape, a greater universe that I'm beginning to develop. Roy and I are starting a store called Gorgeous Creature, which is named after one of the songs. And on the side, I'm also a clairsentient folk herbalist and an aromatherapist, and I am a ritualist and a metamorphic guide. So that concept of metamorphosis is something that I've threaded through everything, all of my work as an artist, as a human being. And I definitely can foresee that the next album will still tie in with that legacy of work.
Right. And that's an important message for every content creator or artist out there, is never stop changing, always keep in that metamorphosis state, because once you stop, there's really nowhere else to go, and it defeats the purpose and why you're doing what you love in the first place.
Right. People actually, they fear the concept of change, and they don't really have a choice. You know, even when you think that someone hasn't changed, they're constantly changing. You know, they're constantly in motion. They're constantly transforming. Now, when you shed light on that transformation and you do it consciously instead of subconsciously, that's when you can really bloom into what it is you're meant to be. So, you know, that's what it means to me when I say metamorphosis. It's the conscious choosing of transformation.
Thank you for that. And just a couple of questions left to close out our interview. The first one, question from one of the audiences. I asked across social media if anyone had a question for you. So this question is from Twitter, from Ananamisi, @Ananamisi, and she asked many questions. I'm picking one. Why did it take so long for Chrysalis to release new stuff?
Would you ask that of a pupa? Why it stayed so long in its cocoon? You know, life is interesting in that even if you are pushing and prodding for something to be birthed, sometimes it's just not going to happen. And for me, as an artist, putting out a record has to be right. Everything has to be aligned. I have to put out something that's truly, truly authentic. And so it took me time to get beyond the whispered words and truly remember what it was that I wanted to say for that sophomore album. So it took me time because I'm a genuine artist and I'm not someone that you can be suffocated into production. Mm-hmm. I'm someone that has to be given the space to really bloom.
Right. Totally understandable. As a matter of fact, a side note, I follow one of my personal favorite artists, Daniel Graves, and the time constraints, he looks at his calendar, he X's it out every day. He's like, wow, that must be some pressure to really dish out material. But you cannot really do that on a subconscious level as an artist. So that's really the conflict, as the dishing out something as a musician and really expressing your inner self.
Yeah, and it's not that I can't force myself to write songs. I actually wrote many, many songs, some with different producers, and it took me a while until I found with Roy what was really right, what was really authentic, what felt good to be put out. So it just took time to hone in on what it was that I wanted to say.
Right, thank you. And this is an open platform. Please do share any information, including social media handles, whatever you wish to share on your upcoming album, Imago.
Will be released on December 7th. If you want to find Nostalgia, you can find me on Instagram by looking up Nostalgia Music. It's spelled Nostalghia. Same thing for Twitter. And then on Facebook, I think you just search Nostalgia. Our website is nostalgiamusic.com. And very soon, in the next month, we're going to be launching a brand new store called Gorgeous Creature on there that's going to have all kinds of really beautiful altar pieces and sacred stone jewelry. All of these things are handmade that kind of go with the concept of metamorphosis. Flower essences, and herbs, and all kinds of cool things. So if you're interested in that, take a look at the website, and all the music will be launched very soon.
Great. Congratulations on that. Thank you for that information. And also, you mentioned herbs and crystals. I think that's one aspect in this modern day and age where people are not in tune with nature and their chi and really inner peace as a whole.
I think there's people that are leading the way, and then there's a lot of people that just haven't quite tapped into that yet. I think once it becomes an absolute necessity, which it will, and they realize that they can't be disconnected from nature because nature is a part of their being, and nature is what we go back to when we die. So the resistance to nature is really the resistance to our own demise. And though I understand that, when you spend a lifetime disconnected from it, you fear your own death. When you reconnect with nature, you kind of start to lose that fear because you realize that you were a part of it all along, and it's just another step in your journey.
Wow. Very profound. I like that. And it's too early, of course, because you have your upcoming album in the horizon, Imago, but any other projects, any other collaborations that you can share that is on the horizon for you?
Musically speaking?
Musically, videos, or everybody's asking for John Wick 3, so let's see what that happens.
Well, as far as videos, we just launched a video called Kingdom of Disturb. That was launched on Billboard, and I think you can find that on YouTube now. And yeah, we plan on doing a couple more videos for sure for the album. But after this album comes out, I'm probably going to take a little bit of a rest because we worked for 3 straight months non-stop, and I have a show coming up on the 6th and launching the store. It's all been a great deal of work. So I'm probably going to go back into my cocoon for a little bit. And then on Valentine's Day, we have a little treat for everybody that we're going to be putting something special out. And, after that, we're definitely going to be feeding our audience with more songs, whether that be singles or EPs. We have a ton of music that hasn't been released, and we plan on releasing that music.
Great. Looking forward to that. And also, I see with platforms such as SoundCloud and, of course, Facebook and Spotify, do you feel that dishing out music, let's say weekly rough cuts, is a good course for upcoming musicians?
I personally absolutely love it because I've always been a very in the moment kind of artist. I'm really excited about what I write in the moment that I write it, and then after a while I begin to hate it. So it's, for me, being able to put things out in the moment when I'm absolutely in love with it. That's what I love the best. And I've actually done that with my cell phone recordings, because the way that I write is I'll sit at my piano or a guitar or whatever, synthesizer, whatever it is. And I have my phone there and I just record it into my phone, what I'm writing in the moment. And so I've actually released a lot of that. I just released a cover of Love Song from The Cure that I had recorded on my phone. And I think the rough uncut, sometimes I cannot seem to capture the magic that happens in that rough cut in a proper recording. There's just something so special about that. And if you're the kind of artist that can do that, you should. I mean, there's a lot of artists, or some artists, that can't, and they don't really sound that good. They have to be in that proper, studio space to really hone in on their craft. And then there's other artists that sound really good in that rough way. So it just depends on what you are and what you're not.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's so true. And great choice, by the way. Yeah, the Cure. I grew up on that and on their music.
Yeah, I love The Cure. I can't get enough of that song. So I've been playing it for a long time.
Right. Yeah. For me, it was The Cure, Depeche Mode, and Erasure.
Oh, yeah.
Those were the times. Anyway, I'm getting nostalgic here.
There's still the times. There's still the times. That's the thing about them, is they're still amazing.
Yes, that is so true.
Yeah.
And they
talk
really
about legacy.
Exactly right. There we go. Thank you so much for this interview and for all the inspiring words that you have provided. Congratulations on your upcoming album, Imago, and all the best to you. Many blessings.
Oh, thank you so much. I can tell that you really care about art and music, and it's very, very present in your voice. So I appreciate it. I had a great time.
Segment 2.
Closing out our segment, our exclusive interview segment, is a pre-recorded interview, conversational interview that I had earlier this year with Ya Toyah, Chicago-based electronic industrial recording artist. Once again, what we showcase here, much like the previous exclusive interview, is the theme of pursuing your dream in whatever creative medium it may be, whether it's filmmaking, musician, artist, painter, so on, etc., etc. I'm going to read the bio for Ya Toyah just to give you, the listener, a glimpse of actually pursuing your dream and embarking on creative endeavors. Ya Toyah is of Polish descent. She came to the U.S. from Poland as a young adult, building her life from square one and withstanding multiple challenges and struggles, trying to establish her identity in the unknown. She gained musical experience while working with various bands and being the part of many projects of different genres. She then noticed that the biggest problem in bands is to stay on the same page when it comes to the passion and commitment. Projects kept breaking up. Time kept passing by, and she finally decided to disrupt the pattern and do something different. One girl show and the album that would be self-written and self-produced from scratch to finish. The album referred to in the bio is Mirrors Don't Lie. And also there are 3 debuting singles off of the album titled Cold Blue, Farewell, and Glass. Ya Toyah has embarked on tours within Chicago, and of course she's going to be preparing herself for touring across the Midwest, hopefully landing here in New York City pretty soon. In any event, tune in, listen, and take notes for Ya Toyah's personal experience as a musician. We cover a varied amount of topics. Without further ado, here is my conversational interview with Ya Toyah. Thank you. And I just finished listening to your single, and I have to say it is a blend of so many instruments that come together so perfectly, and it's a sound that is so unique. Please describe this single that you have, Farewell, Mirrors Don't Lie, and we'll start with that.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for such positive feedback on that song. It's actually the first time I'm working on music on my own, producing it at home, and so that's great that you like it. I've been learning as I've been making that single and all that album that is coming out, and the sound that you described, it comes from many influences, and also me just, sort of starting with either lyrics or just one melody, just adding the layers I want to, when mirrors don't lie. It's very, very meaningful. It's about us realizing how temporary our life is. And, it's also that moment when you look in a mirror and you realize many, many things just to yourself. So it's a very personal song and at the same time very dark song. It also talks about dealing with PTSD after a very close person's suicide. So it's a lot of darkness, and you probably can sense it. I mean, I hope you can sense it in the music itself. I tried to make it so that the meaning is really there.
Thank you for that explanation. And yes, I did get that vibe, and both from the sound and also from, I'm looking at the artwork, which appears to be a mirrored image and is shattered, and that also alludes to the psychological explanation that you are explaining in the lyrics itself. So everything is just so cohesive.
Awesome.
And you state that this is you're embarking on your journey in music, creating music. What is your musical background?
So I've started, I really actually can't remember when I started. I've been told that I started when I was a very young child, singing and just, grooving to the music that would be playing as I was growing up. I started when I was 5. My big sister, she had a guitar and she played it and sang and wrote some songs. And I just picked it up and started learning on my own. It was a giant guitar, and I was really tiny, but I managed to learn a couple basic chords and started playing and then making my own songs. When it comes to a more professional journey, it is a bit tougher. I've been, raised in Poland, so my adventure with States started when I came here, and I had to first secure my life here. So it took me a couple of years, to be safe, to be established here. And then I started writing music. And I joined metal bands. I joined punk rock bands, some jazz bands. I've been in a lot of different musical projects. And about 2 years ago, I put Ya Toyah together with the band. But then I figured that it's very hard, to keep the band together. People have different commitments. They have different levels of passions. And my level of passion is very strong. So if I commit to something like that, I want to build it. I want to give it all into this. And I've decided to go on Ya Toyah journey on my own, because I've been struggling with trying to keep people on the same page. And, everyone has different ideas of what they want to do with their life. I know that I want to do this. And I'm currently here and I'm really enjoying it.
That is a great perspective. And I totally agree. Whenever you embark, or any artist embarks on a journey to expand creativity to the world, you have to go 1,000%, and it's a great way that you went solo in order to push your ideas more quickly. When you have band members, it's so true that there is so many conflicts with the schedule. Starting out with Ya Toyah, what were some of the obstacles that you have found and you have overcome, and you could say, yes, I have overcome this obstacle and here I am continuing my journey?
So the first big one would be the band breaking up because of lack of, the same levels of passion. That was a big one because I've been prepping that thing for a while, and I've been working very hard, and that left me crushed for one day, because then I figured I'm just going to do it anyways. And that was the very, very big thing. I mean, to me, it is a huge discovery about myself, about my own attitude, about my strengths, because instead of giving up or getting into, hiatus, I picked up the next day and I bought the program. I started learning how to do things on my own. And a couple of months later, I've been up and running and starting to record. So I still struggle a lot with multiple things. It's, the beginning. It is something new. I have not been in electronic genre before. So it is basically, step by step, slow learning, making acquaintances. I'm loving it, I can say, but sometimes it's hard. And, I'm just continuously working on it and not giving up. So I think that's a big thing. It's a journey. And, writing that album, completing it was definitely a huge thing. At the moment I realized it's done, I sent it to mixing and mastering to one of my great friends, Brad Pack, who helped me mix and master that record. And the moment I realized it's done, it was like, wow. I mean, people told me it's mission impossible, and I've done it. So that was a big obstacle. Next one that I'm working on is one girl show. I want to play by myself, all that music. So it is very challenging. I've been working on it since February, and it's still not there, but it's almost there. Like, I plan to have a show in the beginning of November, to promote that record, and then start playing live after that more frequently. But it's a challenge. It's another big thing. And I'm enjoying it again. And again, I've heard it's mission impossible. You can't do it. It's, how are you going to do this? I'm not giving up. I'm working on it. And it's coming together very well, surprisingly to me.
Well, our interview is not over, but I have to say all the best, because I do enjoy hearing comments such as this, in which the artist is just moving straight forward, breaking obstacles, and just completing missions despite the mission impossible statement. And that's very inspiring. Thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you.
And one of the personal aspects of the industrial electronic, dark electronic genre is the female lead singer or the female vocalist, female composer. There are quite many, and most are pioneers in this genre. With your contributions now, in the future, we're talking next 5 years, how do you find yourself in this pool of talented women?
Well, I'm definitely, excited. I see so much talent and so much amazing creation and creativity out there. I'm only very humble to even be considered to, go and be part of that. We will see. I mean, I'm taking small steps. Again, I sort of have a vision, but again, I have to take smaller steps and just get there. Definitely want to play and tour with my music. Definitely would be very happy to collaborate on future sounds that I would be making. I also noticed that in Chicago, the industrial scene is picking up. I am from Chicago, and currently I live in Chicago. And the industrial scene here is just amazing. There is a lot of women doing similar thing that I do. It is slightly different because everyone has their own sounds, but I've noticed it is just such beautiful, beautiful, loving atmosphere. It is very welcoming. I don't feel alone, even though I just started. It is a great community, very strong, and I'm just very happy that I'm starting it. I feel awesome.
Oh, great. That sounds wonderful. And once again, the small steps are very important, especially when independent artists such as yourself are just diving in, being an independent artist, you have to blend the business side as well as the creativity side. For those who want to jump into becoming a musician, an independent musician, what are some of the little details that they should pay attention to?
Oh, goodness. That's a good one. Because there is endless amounts of these details. To be honest, I am constantly discovering them, constantly catching myself on something that I'm like, I wish I knew. Or, oh, I wish I've done this. So it is again, step-by-step process. I would say be very focused and be very organized. I am an artist and very creative person, but I also like to be organized. So I have all these calendars. There is calendar in my phone. There is calendar in my computer. There are calendars all over my place. I just ordered one that is a 4-month calendar that I can put on the wall and just sort of oversee the plan, because it's very difficult and it's easy to get lost when you have to do everything on your own. So it's like show dates, book that show, make your merch. I'm making my own merch. I'm making my own T-shirts. So I have to figure out the timeline for all this, album pressing, then, some thing that we do right now. It's endless. It's endless. It's very important to be organized. I would say that is number one. Know what you want to do and plan it ahead. Don't plan it a week before. Plan it months in advance. It's very important. And then tweak as you go. And I guess learn from your mistakes and apply it to the future.
That is so true. And I definitely associate with that comment, because I have calendars everywhere. It is so easy to get lost. When you wake up 5:30 in the morning and before you know it, it's 10 p.m. and you wonder where the time goes.
Exactly. So I'm glad that I'm not alone with this.
It's all part of the creative endeavors.
That's true. And it's, you don't know when inspiration will come to do more. I find myself, I don't sleep enough ever. People wonder how you never sleep, but I don't have time. I'm trying to, because I have to be healthy, but at the same time, I find myself at 4 a.m. in the morning when it was just 10 p.m. and I don't know where the time went. I've been doing things, working on stuff, and I think I should go to sleep.
Sleep is irrelevant. It's just out the window. There's no time for sleep. There's so many things to do.
Exactly.
With your new album, Cold Blue, it's going to be releasing in October. Some of the sounds, I have a description here, and it delves into love, sanity, values, freedom. And these are the many things that industrial and dark electronic music has been broadcasting for years in comparison to mainstream. What are some of the songs that listeners would be looking forward to?
Oh, goodness. I'm hoping that all of them. And the album is very eclectic. It is industrial, electronic, dark album, but each song has its own thing, and you will actually see it. I am about to release some more music before the main album comes out. The new song that is coming out next on September 28th, I believe, the very last Friday of September, it is called Glass Eyes. And it is different than 2 previous songs that I've released. There is Funeral for Love that I previously released, and I'm going to put it on Spotify in 2 weeks. So I know many people have not heard that song as well. The whole album will be 10 songs, and each of them has its own story. I think people will definitely like Rebel. It is a very self-reflective song. I'm a rebel. And for those who know me, they will figure the moment they listen. for those who don't know me, I hope they find a part of themselves in that song. It is, again, very personal story, but at the same time, I hope it reflects on others and opens up that little thing in them, making them feel, oh, it's about me. Mm-hmm. I hope to do that with this song. Flashback might be the one that a lot of people enjoy. It's a very dark song, and it's a piano-based song. So piano instrumentals are to sort of put more emphasis on the darkness and fear that song exudes. Other stuff that will be there. Velvet Sky is definitely a very different song. It's dark. It's more electronic than other ones, even more electronic. It's sort of crazy. I used some crazy effects and voices in that song, so I'm excited to see what people will say about that song. I hope that people will enjoy this album.
Cool. And as I had mentioned in the top of this interview, the song Fairer Mirrors Don't Lie, it just has a blend of so many instruments, and I personally appreciate when songs or albums have pianos, guitar, just a slate of instruments and not just focus on electronic.
Yes, and also because I've been new to, this genre, I had to use what I had as my skills, and I did. I blended what I could. I gave what I had into this album. So it is definitely a blend of different instrumentation, and that's why I think it might be a little bit different. I hope that it will be to people. We'll see.
It would be different. It would. Different in a very good way. Don't worry about it.
Thank you.
Also, with social media, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have Twitter, and of course, SoundCloud for musicians. And now we have everything accessible for the musician. And one question I like to ask my interviewees is the level of collaboration or releasing songs, let's say on a weekly basis or a daily basis. As an independent musician, do you find that to be beneficial for you?
To be honest, I am sort of, and it's weird to admit, it should be a secret, but I'm not going to make it a secret. I'm sort of perfectionist in my own way, which I know I am very far from perfect, but at some point I need to know that I've done enough to be able to share it. So if I write a song, I will tweak it. I will spend time on it before releasing it. And when I release it, it will probably be sort of it. I will probably not be doing much more to it. I used to be an amazing punk rock jazz band, and I've worked with these guys for a while, and they've been amazingly talented. Their name was Johnny Comes Late, and I've noticed that they've struggled with releasing music. They've been tweaking, perfecting, and they never released it on time. Years passed, and they never released their music. And so I'm sort of in between. I tell myself when to stop and just release it, but I do not release stuff that is just ideas, on a weekly basis. I sort of make it, seal it, and then plan when to release it. So it's a little different approach. But I've seen a lot of artists do it. A lot of artists draft stuff and then they share with the world. And I'm just worried about, creative process, because there is endless ideas and people have endless visions. So the moment you release it and ask for, feedback, and you want to continue working on your stuff after that, I feel it might distort your vision and make it different. And then you lose your own voice in it. So, I don't know.
Oh, that's an interesting perspective. I haven't seen it that way. And it's true. Most, I would say all artists have that perfectionist level that even if the artwork, the music is nice, it still needs more. So that goes across the board.
It could be forever. It is a thing. It really is. You have to literally stop yourself, tell yourself, okay, that's enough. It is what it is. Let's move on. Because otherwise you can spend lifetime on trying to perfect a thing no one will ever hear. And that would be a sad story. Yeah.
yeah, that is absolutely true. And especially when it comes to music, it's lucky thing right now we have technology to help us more faster. It's not like the 70s or 80s that we had to do everything manual.
That's true, exactly. I think embracing technology is a huge part of music business, of music creation these days. It's beautiful that we have that opportunity to, get things done the way we do now. And I appreciate it especially because back in Poland, when I was growing up, we really did not have access to any of the stuff that is here in States right now. It is crazy. To me, it's like additional wow effect, because kids growing up in Poland and kids growing up here, they have different reality. Maybe today, from maybe last 5 years, it's been changing and it's been more even, but before it's been tough. So yeah.
Absolutely. And even for live performances, most of the software that you use in the studio, you could transfer it onto a laptop and take it on stage, and it will make the performances much more easier as well.
Yes, that's true. I mean, it depends on how you do it and what you do, but yeah, you can, for example, record stuff live and then tweak it in the studio, which is amazing, and then you have a live recording. So that definitely helps.
You're taking small steps now, of course, but in the top of your head, who would like to collaborate on a song or on an album?
Oh my! Well, there is so many artists that are amazing and huge. So I would start small. I really want to do some collabs in our local Chicago world first. There is an amazing band called Trauma Bond that I really enjoy, and these are sweethearts, amazing guys. I definitely want to collaborate with these guys. Then there is a Echo House, which is another Chicago local artist, absolutely amazing, talented person that I'm looking forward to hopefully collaborate in the future. And Lorelei Dreaming, another great band, also industrial, electronic, dark wave kind of thing. I mean, I could go crazy and say, it would be awesome to collaborate with Trent Reznor on something, or, 9 Inch Nails, but it is, they are huge, and the truth is it's very far away. So small steps. I really want to collaborate on the local level and make amazing independent music.
Right. Also, for independent musicians, I find that it is so important to collaborate, even with music outside the genre, with the diverse background that you have described. You have played in punk and jazz. It's also great to collaborate with different artists and different genres, because you never know. We have seen rock and roll with hip hop, and all of a sudden it just goes across the board and targets different audiences.
Exactly, I agree. I definitely am so excited because I am inspired by many different artists and coming from all the genres that are out there. So I'm thinking that this will be very interesting, because in the future I'm very open for all these ideas. I'm not locked in just electronic, industrial, especially that I'm new to it. So hopefully the collaborations that will occur in the future will bring some new to the music. And would be amazing, because I hear many people say that music is exhausted, that there is no new music. I don't agree with this. I think there is endless potential for the music. You just need to think with open mind.
Yes. You have to. Personally, I find mainstream, it's not as inspiring as it should be. But for industrial, underground, electronic music, there's so much creativity and there's so many artists putting new stuff that it's continually evolving throughout the years.
Exactly. And it's crazy. You know, mainstream has its own way of being put out there. It is, sort of controlled by bigger companies. So they want the sound to be the way it is because that's what sells to the crowd. But as you mentioned, the level of creativity that is happening, in the underworld is mind-blowing. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, agreed. Excuse me. Concluding our interview, 2 final questions. One question would be plugging your social media, where people could find you, your upcoming album, anything you care to add.
So people can find me all over the place. I actually have a website. It is YaToyah.com. I'm on Spotify. I'm on Google Music. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Reverb Nation, Bandcamp, all over the place, really. So just type in Ya Toyah, IYATOIAH, and you will find me.
Great, thank you. And the final question, more as a motivational type of question for artists out there, musicians who find themselves they don't have the funds or they don't have the right equipment to buy, they don't have a studio, but they have the vision. What do you say to these upcoming artists, especially females who, as I mentioned, are such a pillar in the industrial music scene?
Well, I could say exactly like I did. I mean, have 2 full-time jobs, make money, put aside, live poorly,
right,
to save up, and then, just start slowly. I did not get an expensive program. I got the very affordable program to start. I could have gotten a program that is 10 times more expensive, but I started with a very, simple and non-expensive Logic pen, and I'm really loving it. I think I will continue working in that. So, oversee what you can do, plan ahead, and don't be afraid of the big word, because there are people that will help you. Start collaborating, do crowdfunding. This little thing called social media is actually very powerful. So I'm myself thinking about maybe crowdfunding some stuff and getting help from my audience and my fans. I think that's a great idea to go. And just don't give up. Just keep that vision and keep pushing, because it will happen. But you have to push. You have to not lose that faith, that, passion in you, and it will happen. It's a hard work, but it's beautiful work. It's everything.
Yes, that is the statement of the year. It is definitely beautiful work, and you have to work hard. And one thing that you mentioned, the crowdfunding, that is an area, it's 50-50 with artists. Some say they like, some say they don't like because they don't want to ask money. I find that's the best way for audiences to help the musician, the artist, push the creativity more quickly.
Yes, it's true. I have not tried it. I'm, afraid. But I've heard people say you can't be afraid to ask for help.
Right.
You need to ask for help. And me as an independent girl, trying to stay strong in this crazy, crazy world, I'm asking myself the exact same question that you just mentioned. Where is that balance where you ask and where you should not ask? I don't know. It's very confusing, but at some point, I can't do it all on my own. I need help
Right.
from, others. And it's been in my mind for a while, and I'm really, really brainstorming this idea. So we will see.
Well, it's a great idea, and we just started crowdfunding, and I had the same decision to don't do it. Why should I ask? Well, there's so many benefits with crowdfunding, and as I mentioned, it pushes the creativity forward. You have a connection with the audience, and if you do, hey, best of luck. I know you'll get tons of assistance.
Oh my goodness, thank you. Thank you, Ken. Now I can't not do it.
Well, thank you once again, Ania, for your time, for this interview, for all your responses, and as I mentioned throughout the interview, best of luck and on your future projects.
Thank you so much for having me. Good luck with your amazing podcast, and have a beautiful day.
Thank you for tuning in to DecayMag Horror Entertainment News Podcast Season 9, Episode 6. This special edition of our podcast featuring music and exclusive interviews of musicians in the field within electronic and independent music sector. You could find DecayMag across all social media platforms: Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook under DecayMag, at DecayMag. We're not Decay Magazine. It makes me chuckle when I see that mistake time and time again. We're not Decay Magazine. We're DecayMag. We're not the word decay or the letter DK, because we are not a fashion label. We're not Donna Karan. DecayMag. Also, you can find DecayMag Podcast on Google Music Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. Of course, we have the audio accompaniment of this program on YouTube for those of you who use YouTube as a podcasting source. My name is Ken Artuz, founder for DecayMag. Thank you for tuning in. Till next time.